Welcome everybody to today's webinar, Mapping Hidden City Series, AI-Powered Utility Data in Practice, part of ConnectMe's asset mapping events, Mapping the Hidden City Series. I'm Greg Babinski. I'm a URISA past president, American Geographical Society Ethical Geo Fellow, and founder of GIS Management Consulting Services and of the GIS Management Academy. I'll be moderating the event and hosting the Q&A later in the presentation. Before we get started, though, we'd like to run a quick poll of the audience to find out where you're from and what industries and sectors you work in. The poll will pop up on your screen momentarily, so please be sure to fill it in and submit. This will help us understand the demographics of who the attendees are today. Now, we'd like to have an interactive event today, so please enter your questions into the Q&A space located on the bottom navigation bar of your screen. There's no need to raise your hand, just post all questions in the Q&A space. Presenters will respond to all questions at the end of all the presentations in a panel discussion session. Also, please be sure to participate in any audience polls as they pop up later. For information about the speakers and for event agenda, click the Resources tab at the bottom of your screen. We have also shared some useful links in the Resources section, which you can click to access anytime. This session is being recorded and will be available for download on demand after the event. You'll receive an email notifying you when the recording is available. We'd like to thank our webinar series sponsors, 4M Analytics, for making this educational opportunity available to you. Today's featured speakers are myself and John C. King, PE, Vice President and Engineering Manager of VRX Inc., Nissa Guerra, Enterprise Account Executive from 4M Analytics. So, what's the problem? Well, innovating workflows can be daunting for public sector agencies, especially when it comes to incorporating AI. Without guardrails and experienced partners, agencies struggle to develop durable practices and achieve ROI in the near term. AI has made significant inroads into the public sector, shaping everything from data collection and processing to engineering workflows. This session looks at the high impact, low barrier applications of AI to the implementation of advanced utility data into planning, engineering, and asset management for public agencies and their consultant and contractor collaborators. The focus is on instituting feasible innovations in utility data for transportation projects based on success stories and best practices tested by leading engineers. Hopefully, today you'll learn how agencies can implement AI for planning, construction, and maintenance, lessons learned from civil engineering projects, approaches to innovation and stakeholder collaboration, and how AI-powered utility data supports better outcomes. So, just before we get started today with today's presentation, let's take a look at those poll results. What do we have here? So, uh, demographics, your organization types 44% from local government, one from state government, academia, few from industry, and others. Where are you located? United States, 100%. Okay. So now let's get started so we have as much time as possible later for Q&A. John and Nissa.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much, Greg, for the introduction. And a big thanks to John King for joining in on this webinar. John and I have had the fortune or have been able to work together for my entirety of the time I've been here with Forum. So definitely appreciate his collaboration and VRX as a whole. And today we'll be covering essentially what Greg mentioned in practice. So we'll walk through 4M, talk through what VRX does, as well as go through some live examples and actually see it in practice on a project that John and his team has performed. So with that being said, I'm actually going to kick it off to John first to explain a little bit more about what VRX does.
Sure. Thank you, Nissa. And good morning, good afternoon to everyone. Like Nissa said, my name is John King. I'm the Vice President Engineering Manager for VRX. I have over 28 years experience in the transportation, civil engineering market as a consultant, where I specialize in roadway design and also maintenance engineering. I've been PM and engineer of record on numerous projects within the Texas area. Those can include reconstruction and widening projects, rehabilitation, small and large road sign installation projects, all system and all system bridge rehab projects, storm sewer, wastewater, and utility design and coordination. A little bit about VRX. We are an award-winning woman-owned firm headquartered in the Plano area. That's just north of Dallas-Fort Worth. We have 5 offices within the state of Texas and Austin, San Antonio, Houston, and Fort Worth. Nationally, we also have an office in Oklahoma City, Florida, and New York City. We specialize in civil and environmental engineering, where we do roadway and sign and pavement marking projects, structural design, retaining walls, noise walls, environmental permitting, and compliance. Some of our other services include the GEC for a total agency in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We also do construction and management, inspection and engineering services, and we also do maintenance management, wastewater, and aviation. Nisa?
Perfect. Thanks, John. And now to give everyone some insight into 4M. So, my name is Nissa Guerra. I'm an enterprise account executive here at 4M. I've been here coming up on 3 years now. But essentially, what 4M is we are trying to be, or we are the first utility AI mapping platform that there is. So, essentially, the Google Maps for the subsurface. So, all utilities above and below ground. We've been around since 2019, are headquartered in Austin, where I'm based out of. And really, when we look at who our customers are, it comes down to three buckets. First one being the AEC consultant firms, so like companies like VRX and John King and his team. The second one being the DOTs and municipalities, and third one being the actual utility owners themselves. And that could be a large or along a wide variety of segments from public, private, water, wastewater, transmission, distribution, transportation, etc. So that's what we hone in on. And today, I guess now we'll shift over to talking through what utility risk management is. And this is where a question I'll pose to John to actually ask the expert himself on what utility risk management is and the risk mitigation steps that go along with that.
Sure. Risk management involves essentially identifying the risks that are on a project and taking the steps to mitigate those issues and reduce, and that so we kind of make an assumption of what those risks are going to be, and then kind of come up with a plan on what we can do to reduce those risks. We do that for the overall project itself. We want to ensure the safety of not only property and equipment, but the personnel that are actually on the project too. So that involves, reducing the uncertainty of any subsurface infrastructure, which also minimizes our contingency costs. The more that we know of what's underground and the location of where it is underground, the better project that we have, and is more constructible for our clients and the contractor in that. So some of the steps that we take in mitigating that risk is we identify what those are. We make basically a task list of everything that we have. That could be a risk to the project or to the contractor. We then evaluate what those controls and processes are, define an action plan that we come up with, and then we try to access the data that we have to make sure that it's accurate. That's where the utility mapping comes into play. We want to ensure that we have a safe and data-driven design that can be verified in the field and give more compliance to the contractor as he's constructing the projects.
Perfect. And I guess, John, from your perspective, what is the most common utility risk that shows up on these, or I guess at the start of a project?
Most of the time, it's mostly inaccurate data, or even more importantly, unknown data. So utilities that we might identify or might come through. In Texas, we have the 811 system, which I know is nationwide too. But sometimes the 811 system doesn't include all the utilities that are out there. Uh, Sometimes our municipals do not include their water and wastewater in the 811 system. So it takes a little bit more effort to get that data. And sometimes that does come in if you're in an urban area. It might be old data. It might be data from water lines in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We have water lines that were installed in the 30s. We've got cast iron lines that were gas lines that were installed in the 40s and 50s. So a lot of those drawings that do come in are, of course, the area's changed. So what we show might be the right of way on a plan set for an as-built that we receive is no longer the right of way. It's there's been property that's required, and the plans may not have been updated. So really bringing all that data in is what's important to us to have an accurate map of what the utilities are, and that's what helps reduce the risk. The more information that we know, the better we are.
Perfect. And I guess, John, how do you think that relates to traditional utility maps and SU work here? I know you have an example that you kind of walk through typically with people.
Yeah, this is kind of a traditional when you work through the levels of SU that we have, and SU meaning subsurface utility engineering, which is an ASC standard levels that have been established by the American Society of Civil Engineers. Levels A through D, excuse me. This right here is actually a level C subsurface utility plan, which involves we did our record research, which we consider to be level D, it's the lowest of all the levels. Basically, that's traditionally we would either call up a utility, do 811s, request as-built data to be able to determine where these lines are, and then and produce them into what you see here, which is a CAD file that eventually becomes a PDF that goes into the plan set. The next level up is a level C, which takes the level D data and then we send a surveyor out into the field to identify any valves, manholes, handholds, any kind of any surface features that we can to be able to narrow down where those utility lines are. So on this one, you'll see that there's some valves that we picked up. There's a abandoned gas manhole that we found, water valves. There, of course, the power poles are always a good clue for us where the power lines are. So level C, we try to tie all that in to give a better accurate estimation of where the utility lines are. The issue with this is it takes a long time to get to this spot. Sometimes when you request data for a utility company or municipality, it may take you weeks to get data back in a format that you can use. And when you get that format, when you get the data from them, you then have to interpret it, make sure that it matches your right of way, make sure it matches the footprint of your project. Like I said earlier, sometimes the right of way might have increased over the years. There could be additional purchases. Things could be rerouted. And so to get it into this type of a plan right here is going to take, roughly 2 to 4 months to get to this level right here. So that's a lot of time that spend a lot of man hours, a lot of field time, a lot of coordination that goes into creating this traditional utility map here.
Perfect. And I guess how do you see, or how has 4M kind of aligned with the traditional methods that you and VRX are used to?
Well, for one thing, it cuts that time in more than half. What used to take us 4 months to get to something like this, we can have actually in weeks or even days, which will, when we talk about a utility example coming up, we'll show how we get the data almost instantaneously from the map, and then we're able to export that data into a CAD format or GIS format to be able to overlay it on the aerial and then be able to produce that. So what would normally take us for this right here would take us 4 months to create. essentially within days and weeks, we have that same data level and are able to present this either to the client or to take this to another level. We could go to level A or level B type field work for further verification of this. So it's really helped us in the amount of time and labor that we put into developing utility maps. And it's also more efficient and more safer for us too. I'm not sending crews out into the field to identify, valves and boxes that comes up in the system now. And then so, what used to have guys walking on the streets to find the stuff, now we can sit in the office and actually draw this up almost instantaneously.
Perfect. Thanks, John. And now that everyone hopefully has an understanding of utility risk and the traditional methods, I'm going to kind of talk through essentially what Forum does and how we've been able to essentially partner with companies like VRX to utilize our data in those initial methods. So what we've essentially developed is what we call an AI conflation engine. So what this really means at the first step is we're able to collect data, and this can be and digitize it. It can be anything from GIS databases, as-builts, GeoPDFs, permits, satellite imagery, etc. Now we're able to take that information, now actually conflate it. So remove some duplications, start attributing attributes and key metadata to it in order to give you a cleaner map. Now the next step we go to and from there is actually utilizing AI-powered object detection, where we're able to utilize street level, maybe high definition satellite or aerial imagery to hone in on the actual objects or on-surface features themselves. And this can stem from anything from the hydrants, valves, utility poles, like John mentioned, in terms of giving access to those features to the teams earlier on. And we've been able to even take it a step further and even start or identifying and classifying the road marks that 811 sprays out in the field. So giving teams even more comprehensive amount of data to then be utilized on those earlier onsets of a project to help streamline some of those traditional methods that have been utilized. And then we essentially are able to create your network within each of the utility sectors. Now, as you can see here, utilities can make up a large network of what's below the ground, but I think now I can actually move into showing you what it looks like in Forum itself. So let me hop into a map here. John, can you verify it switched screens for me?
Yes, it did. Yes.
Perfect. So essentially, we are a web-based browser where you have the ability to come in to 19 of the states that we have available currently. I'll showcase what states those are at the very end. But you have the ability to come in to any specific area, draw a linear project and set a buffer. You can freehand a polygon. For time and example sake, I'm not going to go through this whole process, but since I already have a project available, so I'm going to shift over to this. So what you'll get is instantly the utility information within that project boundary. You'll be able to get the total line length broken down by all the utility sectors. And then with the AI-powered object detection in 1 to 2 hours, you'll be able to also get those on-surface features. So you can see this project in itself has close to 3,000 objects that have been detected across a wide variety of features here. So now what you can actually do is come into the data in itself and start clicking around to see any of the actual information tied to those objects and those lines work itself. So you can click into it, you can see any of the key attributes or metadata that we have associated from utility owner to installation date, dimension, material type, etc. Now this is the same for the objects themselves. So if I click into this pole here, I can even click into it and see the various attachments that are tied to that utility pole, as well as the estimated above ground height. Now this can be the same for any of the objects that I decide to come into. You have the ability to click into them and it'll generally be in the middle of the map here. And let me just show maybe a road mark example as well. You can see the road mark here and the visual evidence date associated with that mark. Now this is the first part of it. You can also start manipulating the data and see all of the utility owners within that project boundary. You can see what's crossing within the right of way, any parcel information, etc., as well as you have the ability to download into GIS and CAD formats. Now, this is a random example that I've essentially had prepared. Now, I know we talked about having essentially our AI mapping or data practice in real life. So I'm actually going to shift back over. So that way John has the ability to talk about one of his projects that he actually used in practice and how VRX essentially used our data to streamline the feasibility stage of a project to 5 business days. So John, I'll
Sure,
pass it back over to you.
sure thing. Thank you. I'll discuss our one of our projects that we use 4M4 to help us expedite utility mapping on that. Nissa, can you go to the next slide, please? This was for a project, aviation project for George Bush Intercontinental that's in Houston. We were actually working as part of the PMCM for development of the airport. One of our clients actually came to us and was having issues developing an estimate and a utility, basically a utility routing scenario for servicing an area that the airport was looking to develop on the north side. It was adjacent to a Texas Department of Transportation FM road. It was a fairly big road if you know the Houston area, 1960. And what we were looking for was utility routing, a feasibility cost for supplying utilities to this development. One of the things that we used that made the difference for 4M is the amount of time it took us to get it. We had essentially a 5-day deadline to get this to the client. So from start of inception of the project, only knowing the location of where it was and not knowing anything about it, well, we had 5 days to kind of come up with a feasibility estimate of how much it would cost to provide utilities and where those utilities would come from. So we were able to create an instant utility map with the Forum software that basically gave us the foundation data for the site, allowed us to see where all the utilities were. Uh, we had an idea, basically back in the kind of older days of how we would do this. We would use Google Earth and try to use the Street View to find utility markings, maybe try to find a utility marker for water line or any kind of underground utilities were out there. So we would spend time. Uh, Houston is not easily accessible from my office or my staff's office. So, we would have had to send one of our guys out in the field to look for something out there that would kind of give us a clue. So that's a lot of labor and a lot of time that we were spending, just trying to identify utilities. Essentially within, 2 hours on this, I had all the utility map. I had everything mapped on the first day and was then able to come up with different scenarios on how we would actually route utilities to the site on that. So great advantage for us. It was like I said, it's a 150-acre site, so there was a lot of native greenland that we were looking at. We didn't know any utilities that were in that area, so 4M definitely helped us on providing that data that we needed for that. I'll go ahead and kind of jump into the platform. So I'll share my screen. Um, and we'll take a look at it. So this is actually the site right here. It's actually on like I said, the north side of Intercontinental in Houston. We actually developed a boundary line for utility mapping on this for this site that we were looking at here. So like I said, the client was wanting to know essentially where the utilities were. We had an idea of the overhead lines over there because those were apparent. But as far as serving it with water and sewer was definitely a challenge on that. So Forum was able to provide us that data, like I said, fairly instantly. Within 2 hours, I had all the objects detected, the lines were laid out. Some of the key things that we noticed on this site, and this is the main part of the development right here, was how do we service it with water and sewer? What Forum was able to provide us on this was that there was an underground portable line that was on this area that we were found, that we were able to either map as a possible water line connection, especially for the eastern side of the development. As you can see, our power lines are actually on the north side of this seven lane highway that's on the north side of the airport. So we're going to have to get all of our power to cross over here, either underground or overhead. So there's a cost of crossing. This is going to be permitting to make that happen too. Also, there are many gas lines. This is Houston. It's an oil and gas city. So we always have different types of gas lines out there. We were able to identify which owners were out there. These were the actual midstream lines. So they were the big, huge gas lines that you typically see out there. Phillips 66 was out there, was the main supplier that's out there. So we can't use these to provide gas to the facility. These are all midstream lines, but uh, it is one of the things if we're going to go overhead or underground crossing 1960, it's going to be one of the challenges that we're going to have is trying to get across 1960 and have to cross three different gas lines over here. You also see that we have a fiber. This is fiber line over here that was available for telecom, but once again, we're going to have to cross over there. With us mapping this location, we actually were able to come over here to one of the side streets and saw that there's actually overhead power on this side. So this is a city of Houston street, so it's a much smaller street, but still had upgraded power on it. So we were able to identify one of these as a possible a power fee, especially for the western side of the facility. As you see on 1960, there is no sewer at all. So that makes definitely for a challenge over here, but we did find sewer on the city of Houston street. So these are all the sewer lines that are on the green lines or the sewer lines that we did propose as for tapping in that area. Also, there's another water line in this area that we proposed for tapping. Even though we had all of these yellow lines here for gas, there actually is no gas that was found in this area. So that's one of the things we had to work with the client as to how to provide gas to this site over here, based off of all the midstream lines that we did show. So within 5 days, we were able to come up with various scenarios. We gave them three options for providing power, water, and sewer to this 150-acre development, and actually run costs on that because we were able to map out a utility routing plan for that too. So we're able to give them a cost estimate for providing power, for providing water and sewer to there, and also natural gas. So within 5 days, actually, we actually were one day early on delivering. We delivered all this information, the cost estimate, linear feet of piping, any relocations that would needed, any kind of new utilities that would, and the different options for fiber because there's different multiple providers in this area. We're able to provide that data to them within 4 days. Something that would have taken us a much longer time. We're able to meet their actual their deadline to get it to their supervisors for review within that deadline time. So great project for us to basically exhibit what the quickness of utility mapping for him, AI utility mapping is, and how we can get results to make it into a project for future development. Right.
Perfect. Thanks, John.
Sure.
And I was going to ask you to summarize it, but you did at the very end in terms of what you
Yeah.
really saw. But I guess is it fair to say that having 4M gives you the confidence to be able to go to your clients on a quick turnaround and at least have options and information or be empowered with information to have, I guess, more productive conversations?
It does. It gave us the confidence to basically talk about what the utilities were. Like what I said, like I said, within one day, we pretty much knew where all the utilities were on here. We were able to talk about the gas lines that were along the frontage of 1960 and the challenges that could present with those large midstream gas lines and having to cross those, not just from a utility perspective, but also from a roadway perspective. Eventually, there's going to be driveways that have to come off of there. So those are going to have to be designed with these pipelines. It's going to require permitting to cross the pipelines for that. So also permitting, with the DOT also is one of the things that's going to have to be in that. So the more information, it kind of goes back to the risk management. The more information we know about utilities, the more we can budget for that in the fee proposal and the construction contingency on that too. So the more information we know, the better we understand the site, the less unknowns that we have lowers our risk on those.
Perfect. Thanks, John. And I
Yeah.
think to close us out before Q&A, I'm going to show our updated map in terms of our coverage. Let me share my screen again. All right. So as of today, we have 19 states where you can do exactly what John and I referenced in terms of go into the platform, draw a project boundary, and be able to get insight or early indication of utility information, on-surface features, etc., and go through the exercise and due diligence like John and his team did. Now this is where we're at current state. We are committed to having all 50 states, so be nationwide coverage by the end of December. So I guess with that being said, I will stop sharing and then I think we'll pass it over to Greg for Q&A.
Okay, John and Nissa, that was very interesting. Uh, 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 my background isn't showing, I think. There we go. Okay. Yeah, that was great, Nissa and John. Very interesting. My background, having worked for almost 10 years for water wastewater utility in California, that information and the engineering challenges certainly resonated with me. We have three questions from audience members, so I'm going to open those up and then I'll ask the two of you. The first one is, how accurate is this data compared to actual GPS or survey data?
So I will answer first, and then actually we'll maybe give John the ability to give his perspective. But we're not necessarily attributing anything to accuracy levels. What we're trying to do is provide utility information so that way companies and people like John can do their due diligence to get it to X quality levels. So maybe I'll let John give his 2 cents on that.
Sure. So in the realm of SU, where we have level A, B, C, D, currently right now, AI utility mapping is not classified as a level of SU. So this is a tool that we use. So this is similar to how we have, AutoCAD and MicroStation. Those are tools that help us design. 4M, the platform, is a tool that we use for utility mapping. So we take that data, and that's where the engineering part of it comes in. To be able to take that data and look at it and say, how accurate do we think this is? What does this align with the right of way? Does it make sense? Are these where we anticipate the utility lines to be? So there is a level of engineering that still goes into it. I tell people all the time, you can't just map an area and send it out to somebody and be like, here are all utilities. There is some some review that has to go into it. That's the utility, that's the engineering part of it that comes into it. So it's a tool that we use. I know in the industry, there is, discussions of how we're going to integrate, AI mapping into the SU levels. That's still to be discussed. This is a very new technology that's emerging by the day. So those discussions will continue about where we warrant this at. But for right now, that's what I say is that that's where the engineering portion of it comes in to be able to take the data that you have and be able to make it into a map that you can use.
So, sort of related to that question, John, that was how accurate is the data? But, a related question that I would have is how complete is it? When you're receiving the 4M data, are you going out to a site and, with field work or other processes, finding a significant number of utilities that were just missed? And if you do, I presume that's being fed back to 4M.
It does. We have a working relationship with them. As far as we've been with Forum for 4 years now, coming up on 4 years with them. So we do on all of my projects that I have. We like I said, it's a tool that we use. So we do take that information. We do spot checks on it. We make sure the data is showing what we want it to show and more accurately. But we do provide feedback to them. I'm constantly with them saying, "Hey, we saw this, or this doesn't is not corresponding to what we're seeing in the field." So we work with them to make sure the AI engine, the more information that we give them and feedback, helps the AI engine learn more and better too,
Got it.
and to provide a better quality product as we move forward. And I know Nissa has done studies with some of the DLTs on the accuracy of identifying utilities that weren't caught in the traditional SU stages on that too. So I don't know if you want to talk about that, Nissa.
Yeah, I would say, I guess overall, like John is spot on in the sense of we've come a long way. We've been working towards this, and I think the only reason that we've been able to is because of companies like John and the DOTs in the industry that we're partnering close with in terms of being able to work on the comprehensiveness and I'll say accuracy challenge that there is. And we've gotten a lot of, positive feedback in terms of what we've been able to identify and how we've been able to help mitigate risk or catch, things earlier for companies in the design process that could have that replicate or have ripple effects in terms of if they would have found it later on in terms of traditional sue methods.
Okay, let me move on to some other questions. One is, how has this early AI analysis aided planning for on-site verification?
Nisa, I'm sorry, Greg, can you read that one again?
How has this early AI analysis aided planning for on-site verification?
Well, I think, from my standpoint, this is definitely a planning tool. Like I said, it gives us the information that, normally, let's say I need to send a geotech out into the field to locate some boreholes to do some soil samples out there. Um, they're going to do my geotech's going to do his due diligence. He's going to call 811. He's going to do his side of what he does. As a QC side of it, I'm also going to run 4M on it to see if his boreholes that he's identified, which he's got coordinates on those, so I can plot them into my GIS or my KMZ file and overlay that with the 4M data to see if what he's identified are good locations for us to do boreholes. So we use it as a planning tool and as a QC check to verify before we send anybody out in the field to do any of that.
Yeah, and I guess the only thing I would add is we're seeing that similarly across other companies and customers that we're working with, as it being something that they utilize early on to even help them maybe further solidify their on-site verification that they're going to do. Like if there are things that they're noticing within the forum data and their engineering knowledge that are areas that they need to further investigate or explore because they need to actually understand if there's going to be a risk, a utility risk or conflict within that affects the design. It helps just maybe give them a more solidified plan earlier on.
Okay,
We're
great.
also using it on the schematic level too. So when you're doing
Mm,
schematic level layout, maybe roadway, even water line schematic routing. Uh, Typically in that phase, we're not doing heavy utility investigations, before we go into design. So this gives you an early planning level of utility mitigation of risk, identifying what those risks, if a route is even feasible and to be able to plan that route. Those are things you want to find out early, even before you go into the actual detailed design, if it's even feasible for the utility side of it.
okay. A couple more audience questions, and there are two that seem a little bit related here. So let me see if I can put these together. One is what challenge has 4M faced obtaining underground utility data from utility owners? And then related to that is how is the data compiled? Are there existing records that you utilize to acquire utility company information, or is it 100% AI data compiled from imagery?
Yeah, I can take that. So essentially this goes back to the AI conflation engine that we've built. And there's, components to that in terms of the compilation of data. So the first one being, and it's all essentially majority of it is publicly available information, and that can stem from like I said, GIS databases, as-built permits, where we're essentially being able to take that or collect that or information and conflate it and digitize it so that way we can show it within the platform. And that'll produce the line work and key attributes and metadata that you saw. So that's the first part. The second part is where we actually utilize the imagery. And we have a number of vendors that we utilize for that. And then we essentially have trained the machine learning to pick up and detect certain objects like manholes, valves, etc. And that imagery, once it is detected, will then be displayed within the platform itself as an object that you can click into. So I don't know if that, and I guess to double down on it, so because of that methods, we're not actually relying on utility owners to and requesting any information from them because then we'd be very much in the same position as the industry, which is waiting to hear back from utility owners in terms of requesting data and maybe not hearing back. So that's why we're essentially tackling this challenge with AI.
Um, so one last attendee question that I see that maybe builds upon that last discussion, Nissa and John, is does the 4M data include information from AI as to the estimated veracity of the data? And I'll sort of interpret, do you get sort of like a confidence, for a client like VRX? Do you have sort of like a confidence level on the veracity, as this audience member used, or like the accuracy, a confidence level, I think.
Yeah, I can take this and then maybe John can give his perspective on actual usage or day-to-day usage of it. So currently we're not essentially attributing any confidence level to any of the line or objects themselves. But what we are trying to do is give the most comprehensive amount of information at scale. So very quickly being able to for y'all to see that information. And then within the line work itself, when we are able to, we'll actually give indication of where that source came from. So, like for example, City of Dallas, etc. It is not directly linked to the source itself, but we're at least trying to point in the right direction. But we are working on being even more transparent about kind of I would say the confidence level that we can attribute to that.
Great.
Ladies and gentlemen, just while the speakers are going through your questions, we're going to pop up a quick poll. So we'd like to get an idea of how you collect utility data, and also then at what phase you normally encounter utility issues. And we just like that for our records.
So everyone, while you're looking at those polls, one question I would have for John, and maybe this puts part of the discussion in perspective, but you've been using 4M, John, for a number of years, I think about 4 years. How do you compare your utility research process before that and now that you've been collaborating with 4M? How has it changed things?
Well, I think it's given us an advantage on our utility data collection side of things. Just the speed of how we get information. Normally when we have a project, the days before 4M, we have a project come in, you had to assign it to a technician or a younger engineer. And back, some of the cities or some of the municipalities that we deal with, they don't have online GIS systems. And so you might have to drive to a location, meet with the GIS technician there to actually go over your maps with them to be able to get the data. Sometimes in older cities, one of our bigger cities, the city of Dallas, is a much older city. So some of their records are not even digitized yet. They're still on blueprints. So you have to go to a vault and look in the index card system to be able to relate that to the project you're doing. And so it's very time consuming. There's the effort that goes into it. There's a time to drive, meet with the client. Sometimes you'll request things and you come back and you realize that, well, that wasn't even that wasn't the area I was looking at. Or they'll, sometimes we'll do requests and they'll give us a plethora of plans to look at. And then we'll go through, 40 or 50 plans and then find out that none of these are relevant to what we're looking for. So, so you spend a lot of time and labor and effort. So now that, we're using 4M, essentially all that effort that we're putting into that is advanced, it's accelerated, almost light speed to almost instantaneous that we can have it. So, the task of, assigning it, traveling, calling, emailing back and forth, you know, apologizing that, hey, I might not have been as clear in what my initial request was. Can you look for me again? And so that's a lot of effort that we save now with 4M. Essentially, if we get a new project in, we can map it, and within 2 hours we have the data. So it
Yeah.
just saves all that time.
I know at East Bay Municipal Utility District in Oakland, I spent a lot of time in the vault,
In the
and
vault. Yeah.
not so much for water utility
Yeah.
information, but like other utility information
Yeah.
around major construction projects. And your example around IAH, in my mind was like doing utility work around Oakland International Airport, but the real nightmare was in downtown Oakland, like downtown Dallas,
Right.
downtown San Antonio. It's a whole nother ball game. And
Yeah.
so we had a couple polls. Do we have results of these polls available? Yeah, utility issues. Which phases do you most often encounter utility issues? Multiple choice, planning, design, construction, procurement, not so much, maintenance, not so much. Um, John or Nissa, any comment on the results of this poll?
Well, the construction one is the most, alarming one, right? Construction means that you've already gone through design. That means you got a contractor out there.
Yeah,
And normally, when you discover a utility conflict, it's because he's digging in the ground, right? So he's got his machines out there. He's discovered something that wasn't either specified in the plans. We didn't know it was there. So that's the most alarming one because that's time at that point. You've got a contractor that's, he's got days to complete the contract. He's got, if he's got lane closures, he's got time invested, rental equipment. That's going to lead to, damages that he's going to want to claim for you because, unidentified, unknown condition in the field. Then you got change orders, you got RFIs that are back and forth. So you might spend, months trying to resolve something that's in the field that you didn't know was there. And so that's what we try to avoid. That's the risk that we try to identify early in the project. So once again, the more information you have, the better mapping that you have, the better product you can buy to avoid those issues. We're always still going to find unknown utilities. A lot of times what we run into now is we run into abandoned utilities. We identify a contractor calls me up and says, "Hey, I've got a conduit I ran into, wasn't identified in the plan." So then we spend the next a couple hours identifying, okay, that's the abandoned utility that was there that's no longer active. So that's one of the challenges that we deal with now, not as much as running into known or active utilities, but the abandoned ones are the challenges now. But construction is the one that really kind of makes me perk up because that's where the money's on the line at that point, is resolving that utility in a timely manner, resolving that conflict in a timely manner to get the contractor back going so that he doesn't have to shut down the project.
Yeah, and I would maybe double down on that. That's kind of the one of the main challenges that we are trying to solve in terms of why we exist is to be able to give companies and people like John the ability to utilize our information earlier on at like the lowest cost point of a project to hopefully mitigate the risk of the potential unknowns that you may identify later on in the construction process. Um, so I think John summarized it great there, though.
Yeah.
Nissa and John, I've done some work with GIS return on investment, and I'm a member of the Society for Benefit Cost Analysis. Nissa, I think, somebody from 4M should consider hiring an economist to do a return on investment or benefit cost analysis study of using your product because anecdotally, what John was talking about going from months to a week or days to, get a plan, that's a tremendous cost savings. And, that's key for a company like John's. And, it's a big part of the value proposition of 4M. And, I just encourage you to get that message out there more. And if you can hire some economists to help you do that, that would be great. Um, are there any upcoming AI capabilities related to utility location, this area of the industry that are coming up in the future?
So we have been investing a lot within the product itself, and have been doing so for the last several years, but I think even more so as of lately, which is why we have so many new features and developments that we've been able to release over the past several months, but we're trying to take it a step further and actually partner really close with the industry and start developing more workflows and integrations
Mm.
so that way it can be even more seamless in terms of how companies can utilize our data
Ah,
in multiple aspects and areas across the construction life cycle. So I think the industry will see a lot more in terms of our workflow integrations and how we can essentially get our data in the hands and directly flowing into the tools that they're already utilizing within the industry.
that's great. I mean, that helps all of us, in the industry and out of the industry. I think we had one last poll. Can we bring up those results real quickly, if I'm not mistaken? Oh, there we go. Utility data collection. So how do these agencies currently collect utility data? Relying on utility owners, private utility locating vendors, subsurface utility engineers, and 811, or all of the above or others. John or Nisa, any comments on that?
I think that's what we typically see. Um, and that's, where we will fall into, relying on utility owner records. That's level D right there. Once you take that and you move it up the chain to level A eventually. But that's where also, as we've talked about, is getting those utility records. You have to get that information. That could be the time consuming, portion of it is how do you get that information and then relay that into a map and then relay that into your proposed project, what that is. That's the time consuming part of that. So, the subsurface utility specialist, that's what we also do. That's the level A, B, C, D on that one. But yeah, that sounds about right on to me on that. But that's how the 4M and AI mapping is advancing the industry is by getting that information more quickly to you.
So, John, do you have any advice for, utility owners and, working with companies like yours and 4M?
I think from my perspective, being in the industry 20 plus years, how utilities have come. As a utility engineer myself, uh, this wasn't something I went to school for. We talk about all utility engineers just somehow end up falling into the industry. We're not taught it. It's just becomes something that we do and that we love to do. And so seeing where the industry's gone, how 20 years ago in my career, we barely talked about utilities. We barely had maps that we did. Or existing utilities weren't big. But every project now that we see is going to have some kind of utility risk and conflict to it with the way, especially in urban environments where you're doing rehabs or you're expanding roadways, all the corridors have utilities down both sides, down the middle. You need some type of map. I don't ever feel confident giving a contractor a utility plan that doesn't have some kind of utilities identified on it. It's just a major risk. I've seen those projects go, and it doesn't work good for construction. You end up with multiple change orders, multiple RFIs, liquidated damages, you name it, when those projects happen. So I would just challenge the owners, the DOTs, the municipalities to, highly invest in utility research early in the process. We used to do start utility coordination at the 60% design level when we're doing major design. Now we're backing that up and we're actually doing utility coordination in the schematic phase, even before we start the major design, because we want to start identifying those. Utilities, it costs a lot of money to relocate a utility and a lot of time. So we want to get on that early in the phase.
Okay, well, great. We're at the top of the hour. I want to thank all of our attendees today. I want to thank John King and Nissa Guerra for, a great session, educating me, educating all of us about this new area. And I want to express my thanks to Connect Me events for sponsoring this. And with that, I think we're adjourned.
All
Thank
right.
you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.